All right, welcome back to COM100. And it's kind of exciting because this is the last chapter. This is chapter 12, leadership and group communication. I'm excited to get into this just because it's the last time that you'll be hearing me lecture traditionally and thinking about everything we've talked about all semester long. It kind of leads up to leadership now and what that looks like with group communication. Last time you saw me, we talked about small group communication. And so this one looks at it more from like a bigger standpoint. And so this is what our chapter is going to focus on. You can see first off, we got to understand different perspectives of leadership, how to encourage, productive communication, and also strategies for problem solving, and then strategies for making group decisions, and then ideas on how to like have meetings, how to have like effective, good meetings, right? So defining leadership. First off, this is what makes a difference in quality of the group outcomes. With good leaders, we're able to figure out what is our group aiming for. It could be a small group, it could be a business, it could be a country, anything that like, what are we trying to get out of this now? So I have two definitions here for you. It's interesting because there's no definition here for just leadership. So looking just at group leadership first, this is the ability to influence and also the ability to direct others to meet your goals within the group. How together are you able to work and like influence each other? Where, as shared leadership now, each group member has the capacity to influence and then direct the group in achieving its goals. So, group leadership, I really want you to think that, sometimes small groups have a designated leader. And so that one person might have more influence than others. So, this is their ability to do that. Whereas shared leadership, everybody has that ability to have influence. Groups who share leadership, they're going to be the ones who outperform other groups than with one leader. So I think that having shared leadership, that's like the better one to look at. But of course, there's always going to be groups where there's one leader or a hierarchy of sense. So in order to be a good leader, these traits view of leadership, this is looking at you're going to be a good leader if you have these specific traits. It's going to assume that all effective leaders, they're going to share some personal characteristics. And what research has shown us is that these different characteristics tend to happen a lot or tend to occur most commonly with leaders. Leaders have to be intelligent, they got to be decisive, have that confidence, and also be attractive or just have that attractiveness quality to them. Now, I put competence and interpersonal warmth there with an asterisk because these are found as the top two traits people look for in leaders. So I think it's pretty important to know, okay, I got to be a competent communicator. I got to be competent in whatever it is I'm talking about. And I need to have that interpersonal warmth. That's immediacy here. Knowing that people can come up and talk to me when they have problems or if they want to celebrate anything, I know that they can feel trusted coming towards me if I'm a leader. Now, this is important thinking about how different characteristics are going to be different for whatever your group is trying to do, whatever your group is trying to achieve. So, different goals is going to equal that we need different traits here. So, it counts as effective leadership. It's going to depend on the situation, right? Sometimes you're going to need someone leading you that is very confident in what they're working on. Whereas other times you're going to need someone who is really decisive and can make decisions quickly. It just depends on what the group's goals are. Then we can think about style view of leadership. So that was traits. Now, a style view of leadership, these are the four different styles people have when it comes to their leadership. And so the first one is autocratic. And this one focuses on that the leader, they are just directing others. It says here, telling them what to do. Leaders are displaying this style, make decisions with no input. They don't really care what other people have to say. They're the leader, so they're making the final call. They don't consider that input. And so I feel like this has its strengths and this has its weaknesses. I think this is often viewed as a negative style because people want to be heard. And I thought this was interesting. Research says that this specific leadership style, the autocratic, it's disfavored by millennials and Gen Zers. So I'm a millennial and thinking about, do I want someone to just tell me what to do? No, I want some input at least. Now, with the second style, the laissez-faire leadership style, this one it's known as a hands-off approach. The leader is kind of letting everybody do their own thing. The group members are going to maintain control of what they're going to do, what's going to happen. And so this one can be nice because they're letting people do what they want to do, but and our book says it can be disastrous. So we need to make sure that we're still getting the job done, that we're still working and we're still doing things that we need to do for the goals that we have. Then we have a democratic leadership style. And I think the last two, they're a little similar, but the democratic one, this one encourages input. It says here involves inviting input from group members and encouraging shared decision making. It is nice that it's going to solicit feedback. So, as a leader, you will ask everybody else in the group, what do you think we should do? You're encouraging an atmosphere of communication where you can talk and you can share your input and your ideas. Now, with inclusive leadership style, very similar. We're still encouraging input, we're still soliciting feedback, but as a leader, you need to focus on the 4 R's. Now, the 4 R's here are respect, recognition, responsiveness, and responsibility. When you're focusing on these 4 R's and you're trying to be inclusive, you're going to be able to help anybody with whatever is going on. You're going to be able to recognize diversity and culture within your group. You're going to be able to celebrate these different identities and see who needs extra support and who doesn't need extra support. Then you're going to be viewing yourself as a diverse person, as an inclusive person, and you're trying to be there just for like helping each individual and understanding, hey, we have different intersectionalities. So let's try to raise everybody up and be equal and be here to help each other. You can see looking at these 4, you kind of don't want to be the first one, but the first one, you're probably going to get the work done. You're just not going to be heard. The laissez-faire, this one can be nice because you can do whatever you want, but is the work going to get done? And so the last two, I think, are like your best choices here. I like the inclusive one because we're focusing on that we're all different and we want to celebrate that and make sure that we are all inclusive and equal. Alrighty, so now we're going to lead with communication. If you're a leader, you figured out your trait, you figured out your style. And so I like it that number 1, it's kind of similar to what we just talked about, the inclusive, and it's supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Trying to have this within every decision that you're making sure that everybody's respected and heard. This is going to be a great way to lead through your communication. You're also trying to create a communication climate. You know, are you going to be the type of leader that when you see people in the hallway, you ask them how their day is going? You're going to take a moment to chit chat with them versus are you just going to be the one that says hello from your office and then that's kind of it, right? But when we're able to kind of create that climate, which your book says, the emotional tone of your group, that's going to be really important. So I think that this is where you build that respect. That's where you can have the supportive communication, because if you don't try to build it, then you might end up with a defensive communication climate. What this looks like is that, you know, you're kind of causing crisis to happen because you're not looking at people as individuals. It says here they can see the group as threatening, they don't feel respected or seen. And so let's create a positive communication climate. And then we want to get into preventing groupthink. This is on your next slide, so I don't want to get too much into it, but when you're a leader, You do not want groupthink. And then if you're a leader as well, you also want to manage and deal with conflict. You don't just want to like ignore it. So number three and number four, we're going to get into it right now. So here's groupthink. And so with groupthink, this is when you're in a group and everybody is saying yes, 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 yes. And it comes to your turn and you're thinking no, but it's like, it'd just be easier if I said yes, because then we can move on. And so you say yes. And so usually people, they're going to want to maintain harmony more than actually like challenging people's ideas, more than actually thinking, well, what if we did it this way instead? Now, I understand that sometimes you're in meetings and you just want to like wrap them up. You don't care about the decisions that you're making. You don't care about if this decision is best for the group. And so that can be really detrimental towards your group and your goals. So instead, with groupthink, we want to encourage an atmosphere where everybody's saying yes and you think no. So then you can say no and you can explain why. And then maybe other people will recognize that and understand what's going on. So it's good to encourage input from everyone to feel secure and safe and respected enough to say no, right? It is interesting to think about appointing a devil's advocate. Now, what this means is to have someone in the group take responsibility for expressing dissenting viewpoints. So let's say that everybody's thinking one way. Choose someone to say, like, well, what would you say if we did it opposite? If we did something different and expressing some potential, drawbacks here. They're just brainstorming and seeing what could happen. And then I think that this was really important to delay the decision on things. If everyone's just saying yes and you recognize, oh, is everybody tired? Is everybody over it? Maybe it's like, let's come back to this and say a specific time and place. Let's come back to this on Thursday at 8 a.m. and we'll continue this conversation and figure it out then. Because then everybody can go home, everybody can like independently think about it, and then minds could be changed and you feel more confident encouraging your input and encouraging, your voice a little bit more. So groupthink, bad. We do not want it. Now, some other conflicts might come up, and these are two different types of conflict. This is a substantive conflict and effective conflict. So with our first one, this revolves around disagreements about the task, your procedure, or making decisions within the group. So as a leader, you have to recognize these conflicts are like kind of internal of what's happening here. What are we working towards? And this is going to happen, right? We need to think about ways to kind of like push through them and make sure that we can still continue getting the job done. But then sometimes we're going to notice some effective conflict. And this is just interpersonal conflict. You see differences between members. Maybe there's power struggles. Maybe there's just like bad feelings overall. So this is not good in any way because if you're trying to work towards a goal or a project or something, but now you don't like the person, it's gonna be messy. So as a leader, that's why you really have to like nip this in the bud right away and make sure that everybody can be respected and understood. So as a leader, you got to manage this conflict within the group. First off, you got to focus on that common ground. You got to remind everybody rather than saying who's right or who's wrong, just say like we're all in this together. We're all trying to work through this, right? We all have the same goals in mind. Now, active listening skills are really going to come into play here because then it will help build your interpersonal relationship with each other. You will be seen as a better leader, a better individual, and it will just be good to ask questions and clarify things. Then you'll be able, and I think number 2 and 3 are pretty similar, drawing upon your verbal communication skills, that's chapter 5, and then keeping your verbal and nonverbal messages congruent. Don't say something and then your nonverbals are like the complete opposite, right? So we want to say that we're being honest and truthful and thinking about how can I be clear and competent and cooperative. Then the last one here is stick to the issue at hand. A lot of times when we have conflict, we start thinking about other things going on and we start everything but the kitchen sink, right? We start just bringing up everything that's bothered us. But as a leader, especially, you gotta stick to that issue at hand, make sure you clear it up, and then try to move on from it. You're able to manage this within your group. Now, when we get into problem solving here, you want to think about the structured problem solving approach. I like this one because this is when teams are going to be able to collect information on the problem that they're facing. And we're able to like structure thinking about what we're each doing here and how we're going to each work through this. You got to first define and analyze that problem. What's actually going on here? And then think to yourself, well, what does it mean to like fix this problem? Then you can think about different solutions, and that's where, group think we don't want that. We want to encourage different possible solutions, and then you're able to choose the best one. Now, we do have group brainstorming, which this one's good. And this is when your team is going to focus on trying to have as many possible like ideas to solve a problem, which leads us to piggybacking. I laugh at this term a little bit because when I was in grad school, a lot of times in my seminars, we would be discussing things and then someone would say, well, to piggyback off of that comment, and then it just kind of felt repetitive after a while. But piggybacking is good because you're validating someone's ideas. So thinking about group brainstorming, someone comes up with an idea, you validate it. And then with piggybacking, you're expanding on that idea that was already said. It's good to expand on it and to build upon ideas because that shows that we're truly like thinking about it thoroughly and getting into it. So with group brainstorming and piggybacking, you want to first encourage those wild ideas. This is where we get into like the critical thinking and we can figure out what works for us, what doesn't work for us within our group. And it's just fun to think about outside of the box because something might be better out there. We do want to avoid judging these ideas though, because again, we're building respect. We don't want any conflict, any interpersonal conflict. And so don't judge other people's ideas. Now, quantity is important because the more ideas a group can then generate, the greater raw material it has for the basis of designing a good solution. So when we're figuring out a problem here, the more ideas we have, the better it is. We're able to kind of analyze it. And then you can even combine and then elaborate on these ideas to figure out what works best. So we got to think about when we're leading decision making. This is the last thing I'll talk to you about today. We have to think, how am I going to make a decision here? And as a leader, there's 3 different ways that you can enact decision making in a sense. And this first one is decision by authority. This one is thinking that an expert or a designated leader, they're the ones that's going to make the decision on behalf of the group. You can think about that first style of leadership and how when they don't want anybody else's input, they are probably going to do decision by authority. They don't care about input. They just want to make up the decision, maybe to the best of like their ability and what will better them the most. We do have a decision by vote. And so this one involves when leaders identify 2 or more options, and then all members are going to vote or poll the members on what they think is the best one. I think this one's good because that means like, okay, maybe 9 out of 10 people all voted for the same thing, right? So we're going to follow that, and that could be a consensus as well. You might also think too, okay, there's 10 of us here in this group, and 6 of us voted for A, and 4 of us voted for B. Only 2 more people voted for one more. So that decision by vote, the A people got it, right? With consensus, though, the majority of the people need to agree on this decision. It says here when a group is responsible for not only making a decision, but also putting that decision into action, actually doing something. So it means that all members, they have to support this. So this one can be hard, especially as a leader, trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. This can be a little bit difficult, But you can see how different decisions here, when you come to them, when you make them, right? It's going to depend on the situation. It's going to depend on what's going around you. And so you just have to think, what style and trait leadership do I have right now? And then how can I make the best decision possible? Alrighty, that was the end of chapter 12. Please let me know if you have any questions, but I hope you have a good one. I'll see you later.